Hey guys, Bella, and today we're going to be discussing adult children of emotionally immature parents, how to heal from distant, rejecting, or self-involved parents. Disclaimer, I love my parents, I love my family, I really do, but there is some trauma that weaved its way through my family systems, and this book has really helped me to kind of deal with that, to put a finger on why I felt the way that I felt for all of these years. And I finally feel seen and heard by some of the stories in this book. And once you read it, you will realize that you are so not alone in the way that your family has made you feel. And there are a lot of reasons why family trauma just sort of unwinds and gets passed down through generations. But this book does a really good job of helping you navigate, kind of helping you understand, but then also giving you the tools to move forward as an adult. Because let's face it, we are all trying to become well-rounded adults, and so we cannot continue to repeat the patterns of our dysfunctional family system if we want to live a happy and healthy life, and if we want to have successful relationships going forward. So I want to get into this book. I want to tell you how it helps me and just kind of give you an overall summary of the book itself. So the book kind of starts out by telling you that if you felt lonely during childhood, even when people were around, maybe your physical needs were met, maybe you guys had a roof over your head, you guys had plenty of food to eat and the bills were paid, but you just kind of felt like you were on your own, then you may have had emotionally immature parents. Your parent probably did not have the capacity to give you what you needed emotionally because they did not have it themselves. And so it's really hard to kind of look at your parent with a little bit of criticism because you often feel guilty about it. But what we have to realize is that we did not ask to be born. We did not ask to be children. However, those decisions were made for us by our parents, by having us. So when you have a child and then you fail to meet that child's emotional needs, you do not set them up for success later on in life. So one of the things that I often felt when I was a kid was that my feelings had no place to go. So if I was upset, it was something that I needed to keep to myself. I needed to hide it. I needed to push it down. I needed to get over it. I was often told that people have bigger problems than us, that our problems are insignificant, or that people have it worse than us. It was often a feeling in my household that my feelings were never really validated. My feelings were something that I could not trust because every time I would bring them up, I would be told basically that they either weren't real or that they weren't as significant as I thought they were. So that was kind of the first step, is realizing that that is not how you comfort or treat a child. You have to give a child feedback and you have to validate a child's emotions. So if you had a parent like that who made you think that every single thing you said was wrong or somehow bad, how do you think that causes you to go through the world now? Like, it's obvious now why I have anxiety, why I can't trust my feelings, why I feel emotionally closed off. So obviously, we'll get into more as this goes on, but that was the first thing that really hit me, was like, wow, I did not deserve that as a kid. I did not deserve to have all of my feelings pushed aside. I think one thing that happens is when you don't get your emotional needs met as a kid, you go on later to try to figure out how to get those met elsewhere. And that's what leads a lot of us into those dysfunctional relationships, because what we try to do is we try to recreate the havoc that we were in. We honestly go after people who are unavailable, people who have the same problems that our mom or dad had, people who don't acknowledge us, people who make us feel like, are they there or are they not there? Do they really like me? And I'm here to tell you that when someone actually likes you or loves you, you won't be wondering if they like you or love you. You'll just know. And so, part of becoming an adult is realizing that in these types of relationship where this push-pull happens or this chase happens, it's often us trying to recreate that feeling of instability that we had when we were a kid, because we're used to not having our needs met. We are used to feeling like it's a bother for us to even exist. So it makes sense that we would find ourselves in relationships where we're basically begging someone to give us the bare minimum effort. One thing this book mentioned is that it can be really exhausting for us to maintain relationships, because what winds up happening is we give too much. So we'll often find ourselves putting in 80% of the work where the other partner is putting in 20% of the work. And we put all of our energy into something and then we're confused when we're not met with the other person doing the same. And what we don't realize is that it's not normal to give yourself up for a relationship. It's normal for both parties to come together and for there to be like a symbiotic relationship where emotionally immature parents create children who basically say, okay, these are the needs that need to be met and it's my job to take care of this. So what happens is we turn into adults who become fixers. We get into these relationships with people who need us, who value us, who almost can like smell that we will fix their problems. And so I've dated a lot of people like that who weren't even anywhere near me on like my level, like academically, financially, anything. And it just, I don't know, like for years I just attracted people who really did not meet my needs emotionally at all, but it seemed like I just continued that pattern. And it wasn't until like years of therapy, years of reading books like this, that I finally started to realize you have got to break out of these family cycles. This is not healthy. It's not helping you. And you are so much better than what your brain wants you to do. You just have to kind of acknowledge that, okay, this is the path that I'm trying to slip down, and I have to be really mindful about this. One thing I wanted to touch on was role reversal. So this is basically when the child becomes the parent. This says on page 33, role reversal is a hallmark of emotionally immature parenting. In this case, the parent relates to the child as if the child were the parent, expecting attentiveness and comfort from the child. These parents may reverse roles and expect their child to be their confidant, even for adult matters. People who discuss their marriage problems with their children are an example of this kind of role reversal. Okay, I did not realize that it's not normal for you to know all of your parents' problems as a small child, because my parents told me everything that was going on and more. I feel like every single time they had issues with each other or interpersonal relationships, it was something that I was being told. And looking back on it, it was just like, I don't know that if they didn't have anybody else to talk to. I don't know if they felt comfortable with me, but I just became the sponge for all of these problems within the family system. And this was the case for grandparents as well. I know Southern families can be very close, and we're very much like a, let's tell the whole family all of our problems. There's honestly like a phone chain system in my family that happens. Like when one person has a problem, everyone calls everyone else to talk about the problem. And so it just becomes like a revolving door of someone's problems being pushed out through the family until the family can come together as a unit and solve the problem. And then I realized later on, like, oh my God, this is so dysfunctional. I should not know this about my cousin, and I should not know all this stuff that's going on. So the role reversal takes place, and the kid learns that I have to be a grown-up. I have to be an adult. And we even praise kids for that. We'll tell kids like, oh, you're so mature for your age. You're an old soul. And what we're really telling them is like, I'm glad you don't have real needs as a child. I'm glad that I don't have to do what other parents have to do for their kids for you, because that would be exhausting if you acted like a real kid. One of the points that she makes in the book about detaching from like your enmeshed family system is that you have to stop trying to please your parents and please your family system. And this is something that we may not even do consciously, but our behavior is rooted in when we interact with them, we pretty much know what they want to hear in order to get like a satisfying result from them. So in order to kind of stop this cycle from happening, we kind of have to have a grown-up approach to having conversations with them, making decisions with them, and interacting with them on a social level. I know this is the case for me, but for a lot of us, it does not matter what we do. We're probably never going to fully satisfy our parents anyways. So spending our life trying to make them happy is really a lost cause in general, because it leads us to feeling like we're not good enough, and then it leads them to feeling like, I don't know, like responsible somehow for our success or failure. For me, I had to define success in my own terms and then be totally confident in what that meant to me, because I knew that that would not be success in the eyes of my family. That would only be success in the eyes of me. And so getting real about what you want and the path that you're on, and then staying firm in that, I think is very important, because the way these family systems work is when you start trying to untangle from them, they hold on tighter. They try to get you to stay in that. And so breaking free almost becomes like its own little project where you're trying everything in your power to get out of this family system, and they're trying to pull you back in further and further. And I've experienced this anytime I have tried to set boundaries with my family. It has been extremely difficult, because at first they take it as a personal slight to them, and then they'll push back against the boundary, and then I have to keep restating that over and over again. And so one thing I've learned in therapy is to just calmly restate the boundary over and over again. It may take 5 or 10 times for you to say something in order for it to finally stick in their head that it's not going to be their way anymore. It's going to be your way. And if they're not comfortable moving forward in the relationship with that, then you don't really have space for them in your life. And so asserting boundaries, learning boundaries, it's it's a muscle. It's it's something that you're not going to be like confident in the first couple times that you do it. But I find myself finding it easier to do it each time, and I can stand up for myself now and know that like I'm right. I'm not saying that I have all the answers to everything, but I know as a 28-year-old woman right from wrong, and I know when my family is being unreasonable. So being able to call them out on that is something that I have learned over time. Another point from this book is that she says you should look for support systems outside of your family, because it's a good chance that your family is never going to get out of that pattern of, dysfunction. And so finding those places in life, or finding those people that you can go to for support outside of your family system, is really important. I know for me that is some of my best friends that are my age, and they've also sort of dealt with their own family drama. They know my family's history, they know the dynamics. And so when I need a place to go and vent, or when I need someone to turn to be like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe she did this, I cannot believe that they're still acting like this, I don't have to deal with that within the family system. I can go to an outside source. And so I think that that's really important, because an outside source wants to support you, and they're not going to be taking sides like a family would. I'm guessing that for a lot of you, your family interactions can leave you feeling like really exhausted. A lot of us feel like dread when we go visit our family. I know especially around the holidays, it can be really stressful thinking about all the interactions that you're going to have, or the dinners you're going to have to go to, the people who are going to say offensive or racist or homophobic stuff, or talk about politics, and just, I don't know, it can be very overwhelming knowing that you're going to have to go into that situation. And I almost feel like a heightened sense of physical awareness when I have to do that sometimes. And so one of the points that she makes in the book is the difference between relatedness versus the relationship. So you can handle your family without losing your mind, but there's sort of like some mental tricks that you have to pull off in order to do that. So I just want to say that if I had this information like 10 years ago, I probably could have saved myself a lot of hassle. But she says on page 147, in relatedness, there's communication, but no goal of having a satisfying emotional exchange. You stay in contact, handle others as you need to, and have whatever interactions are tolerable without exceeding the limits that work for you. So basically, you're just going in there as just the passive, observational person. It's almost like you're going into like a bomb negotiation or a war zone, and you're just like, I have to remain neutral, I have to remain calm, I cannot let this affect me, I cannot let their feelings become my feelings. And I think the key point here is, do not expect more than what they can give, because they've shown you time and time again that they can't give it. And so every single time that you walk in there hoping for something different, hoping for a satisfying exchange, hoping for your uncle to not be racist and homophobic, hoping for your mom to accept you for who you are, hoping for your dad to finally understand your career aspirations, every time that you do that, you are setting yourself up for failure, because hoping that someone will change is not the key to making them change. People are pretty much who they are unless they decide that they want to be different from that. So I guess like if you get nothing else out of this book, the reason that we get frustrated with these interactions is because we want a different outcome. And so going into it knowing up front, this is what it is, this is the most that they can give me, is the best way to handle it, because then you don't leave feeling like your expectations were not met. If my expectation is here and then they perform here, I can leave knowing that everything went as smoothly as it could possibly go. She says it makes more sense to aim for simple relatedness with them, saving your relationship aspirations for people who can give something back. So that's powerful. That means that our energy is worth being spent on people who have the energy to give back to us. So there's literally no point in you giving to this family system that is not productive for you. I want to encourage you to try and be the observation person when you can. Try to act like it's a science experiment and that you're just, taking notes on how everything's going and how everyone's interacting with one another. And I really think that you'll get something out of reframing your family dynamics like that. On page 167, she starts to talk about basically cutting your family off, which I've never really felt the need to do, but I have had periods where I stepped away from my family and I limited communication because I felt like the communication was not healthy. I felt like I was being either used or manipulated. And she says, take control of how frequently you're in contact with your parents. By setting limits on contacts, you can devote more energy to your own needs for self-care. Your parents may protest when you aren't as generous with your time or attention as you used to be. So once again, she notes that when you set up a boundary, they're going to get upset. This is a normal progression of setting boundaries. And so I think it's important to just kind of think, I can already predict that this is going to happen and I just need to be prepared for it. She goes on to say, your job is to take care of yourself, regardless of what others think you should be doing for them. And so, I mean, it's kind of, it seems so obvious, right? Like, I'm an adult now, they're an adult. We should all just kind of be adulting. But in this enmeshed family system, what happens is you're still playing the role of their child. Where you're an adult now, they don't see you as an adult. They see you as an extension of them, and they still see you as that childlike version, because to them, you're always going to be their child. And so I think it's important to kind of, I mean, you don't have to be hard on your parents, but there is a point that we have to get to where we realize, like, okay, it's time for me to leave the nest. It's time for me to have my own family, and I can no longer operate under the parameters of what they deem is a successful family. I have to create my own version of that. Ultimately, I feel like you stepping forward and taking control of your life is really the only thing that you can do, because you can't control whether or not your family heals, whether or not they go to therapy, whether or not they pick up a self-help book. You have to be in control of your own life. And so if you're finding this video in your 20s or your 30s, you know, it's not like you can't reverse the things that have been happening. You have control over those interactions that you have with your parents. And I do want to give parents grace, because they're mostly operating the best way that they know how, but for a lot of them, they never took accountability for the way they made us feel as children. So it makes sense to realize that, like, they're probably not going to do that as an adult either. I told you guys in the beginning of the video, I love my parents and I appreciate everything that they did for me. It's not that discovering our parents weren't equipped to handle our feelings is a bad thing. It's more or less realizing that that is kind of the contributing factor to why we're the way that we are now, and how can we move forward with that information. She says towards the end of the book, you may not ever have the kind of relationship you've wanted with your parents, but you can make each interaction with them more satisfying for you. You can speak up politely when you feel like it and be different without offering excuses. By expressing yourself to your parents in this way, you can be authentic even in the absence of their understanding. I think that's one thing that in my early 20s, I wanted to justify a lot of what I was doing, and I wanted to prove that what I was doing was right and good. And part of being now towards the end of my 20s is that I no longer feel like I need to justify any decision that I make, because it's my decision as an adult. And so I guess, you know, this kind of book and this kind of thinking is what has led me to the relationship I'm in now, which is fully functional and healthy. It's led me to having a successful career, doing what I want to do, not doing what other people think I should do. And it's helped me in all areas of my life. So if you're trying to heal from family trauma, it is work. It is tough. It is very, very draining. And so this book is honestly 5 out of 5 stars. I got so much out of it, and I really could not recommend it enough. It's a wonderful way to kind of take a reflective look at your family systems, and I'm going to be reading her next book in the series, and I will let you guys know how that one is as well. Thank you guys so much for staying to the end. If you have any tips about how to handle your parents, or how you've dealt with this situation, or you feel about it, I would love to hear about it in the comment section below. Take care, guys. I will catch you in the next video.